Next time you travel from New York to New Jersey, take the train.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to a brand new Trains Are Awesome.
If you've ever been to New York, chances are you've been on the subway before. But did you know that New York City has a whole second subway system? It's called Port Authority Trans-Hudson, or PATH for short. PATH exists to connect New York and New Jersey. In today's video, we're going to learn all about it. We'll start with some history, then take a ride from Exchange Place to the World Trade Center, and finally take another train from Grove Street to 33rd Street and back. If you're visiting New York soon and you want to use this video to plan your trip, feel free to skip between the chapters. In 1609, a man named Henry Hudson sailed his ship up a river. Little did he know that the river would one day be named after him, and that on both sides there would be sprawling cities. Today, the Hudson River marks the boundary between New York and New Jersey. On the New York side, the towering Manhattan skyline commands your attention. On the Jersey side, communities like Jersey City and Hoboken possess their own charm. And traveling between the two is pretty easy. There are numerous tunnels and bridges, meaning you can take the train, car, bus, or ferry, whichever is best for you. But for many years, the Hudson River formed a barrier. In the 1800s, trains became the main way that people traveled between cities. But for people coming from Point South into New York, Jersey City was as far as they could go, and then they had to change to a ferry. But one company, the Hudson and Manhattan Railroad, H&M for short, no, not that H&M, that one, they set out on a groundbreaking mission to connect New York and New Jersey by rail. Attempts at construction of railway tunnels crossing underneath the Hudson had been made in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s, well before construction for the New York subway started. However, due to delays and breaks, the Hudson tubes didn't open until 1908, a few years after the first subway line. President Theodore Roosevelt pressed a button in the White House that ceremonially turned the electricity on so the trains could run. By 1911, 2 pairs of tunnels now cross the river, each tunnel carrying one track. The northern pair, known as the Uptown Tubes, took trains up to 33rd Street in Manhattan, while the southern pair, the Downtown Tubes, took trains to the Hudson Terminal. Now, the New Jersey side is where things get interesting. Trains ran to Hoboken or Newark, serving major railway stations such as Hoboken on the Lackawanna Railroad, Pavonia on the Erie Railroad, and Exchange Place and Manhattan transfer stations on the Pennsylvania Railroad. This let people come into New Jersey by train from different parts of the country and then easily transfer to an H&M train to Manhattan. And in a lot of ways, that's still how it works today. PATH trains stop at Newark Penn Station, which sees many long-distance, intercity, and commuter trains every day. And they stop at Hoboken, which is a major New Jersey Transit commuter rail terminal. You can then take PATH into Manhattan, where connection is available to the subway at most stations. Say you're staying at a hotel near Exchange Place station. How do you get into New York? Well, once you found the PATH station, you have to pay to ride. Now, you can buy a single ride ticket, but since 2024, anybody can use their debit card, credit card, smart devices to pay for PATH, which makes it a lot easier. If you have an Omni card from the New York subway, just remember you cannot use it on PATH because PATH and the New York subway are 2 different systems and there's no fair compatibility between the two. Officially, there is a photography ban on PATH, so a huge thanks to my anonymous guerrilla videographer who took today's footage. Of course, they made sure to leave out any clips that would expose matters of deep national security importance. Sarcasm aside, PATH is a fascinating system. That's because since its inception, it's been designed to take passengers from any New York station to almost any New Jersey station. As this map illustrates, there is service from the World Trade Center to Newark and to Hoboken. From 33rd Street, you can take a train to Hoboken or Journal Square. Complicated underground flyovers exist so that trains can go in all directions. It's really quite a marvel when you think about the engineers who designed and built this 3D web of tunnels in the late 19th century.
train to Newark Penn Station. Making stops at Exchange Place, Grove Street, Journal Square.
You may have seen pictures of the World Trade Center station before. The station itself sits on a giant loop of track, while the concourse above forms a futuristic shopping mall known as the Oculus, designed by architect Santiago Calatrava. The history of PATH is actually more intertwined with the World Trade Center than you might think. For 6 decades, this was the site of the H&M's Hudson Terminal. However, the Port Authority wanted to build the World Trade Center here, which the H&M was open to since they weren't doing too great financially. Years of workers going on strike, increased car use, it had all made the maintenance of the system unaffordable. By the 1930s, the Holland Tunnel, Lincoln Tunnel, and George Washington Bridge had all opened and were growing increasingly popular with each year. Trust me, I've spent my fair share of hours in the Lincoln Tunnel. PATH might be far from perfect, but I'd much rather take PATH than any of the car tunnels. Anyway, in 1962, the Port Authority took over train service in exchange for the land for the World Trade Center. They began a rebrand, renaming the train to PATH, Port Authority Trans-Hudson, repainting stations, and introducing new trains to replace the old trains that had been running from back when the system first opened. Of course, the September 2001 terrorist attacks impacted PATH service. The towers collapsed onto the station, which had been evacuated just before. World Trade Center Station was closed afterwards, but so was Exchange Place in New Jersey. Water from the firefighters had flowed through the tunnels across the river and flooded the station. Both World Trade Center and Exchange Place reopened in 2003. We're back in New Jersey, this time at Grove Street Station. Let's take a train to 33rd Street in New York. These current trains with the blue fronts are known as the PA5. They have been in service since 2008, and they are the 5th model of train to run on PATH since the Port Authority took control of the system.
This is the train to Journal Square.
Stand clear of the closing doors.
They were built by Kawasaki and are some of my favorite trains in the US. The PA5 is smaller than your regular American train because the tunnels have tight clearances. They can also make some really sharp curves.
This is the train to 33rd Street.
The first stop is Newport. Here you can transfer to trains to Hoboken.
Stand clear of the closing doors.
PATH's primary purpose is to move people between New York and New Jersey. But if you want to ride it between 2 spots in Jersey or 2 stops in Manhattan, that's fine too. You only pay when you enter a station, and the fare is $3 no matter where or how far you go. Newport was built to connect to the Pavonia station of the Erie Railroad. However, that terminal was quite a long walk away, so in 1954 they installed the first moving walkway in the US. These are standard at airports now. It's kind of cool that they originated here. After Newport, we enter the Uptown Tube under the Hudson River. The next stops will all be in New York. Uptown Tube is kind of a misnomer. Of course, there is a separate downtown tube a few miles south of us, but the areas in Manhattan that PATH serves are still very much lower and mid-Manhattan. Stations such as Christopher Street, 9th, 14th, and 23rd Streets. Did you know that for a brief time there was a train from 33rd Street to World Trade Center? It was in 1980 during a subway strike. PATH ran these trains for a few days in April so that people had a way to move across Manhattan, even if it meant going through New Jersey. There have been many proposed extensions to PATH, but 2 really stand out to me. One was to Grand Central Terminal in New York. This was way in the early days of the H&M, but it never really happened because of the New York Subway Company that was trying to block it.
This is the train to 33rd Street. The next and last stop is 33rd Street.
Stand clear of the closing doors.
Another extension, one that's been proposed many times and is an absolute no-brainer to me, is to extend it 1 mile south to Newark Liberty Airport. It's almost embarrassing that this connection doesn't exist. It's so obvious. New York is really bad when it comes to transit access to its three major airports. We've arrived at 33rd Street, the last stop. This is right by Penn Station, Madison Square Garden, and the Empire State Building. You can also transfer to the subway through an underground concourse. When traveling from New York City to New Jersey, all you have to do is follow the signs. Signage on Path has improved so much in recent years, especially with the addition of the digital signs. When I first used the system, which I think was like 15 years ago, there were no digital screens anywhere. You had no real way of knowing when the next train would come. But now there are digital screens at a lot of the stations, and the colors on the screens match the colors of the train, so you know where the train is going. Here's another fun fact for you. Officially, according to the US government, Path is a commuter rail rather than a subway. This is because back in the day there were track connections to the mainline railroads. Today, Path trains still share a bridge with Amtrak and New Jersey Transit. Since Path is regulated by the Federal Railroad Administration and not the Federal Transit Administration, the trains, tracks, and staff all have to adhere to much stricter safety regulations. All in all, this makes Path 3 times per hour more expensive to operate than the New York subway. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video about Path, and I hope that it was helpful and interesting. And that's the last video of 2024. It has been an amazing year where we've got to do so much, and I'm so glad you came along for the ride. 2025 is going to be another great year, full of even better Trains Are Awesome videos. So if you don't want to miss any of them, subscribe to Trains Are Awesome, and we'll see you in the new year. Thanks so much for watching today. Happy holidays.